So good morning, everyone, and also good afternoon, good evening for those of you who have joined from Asia Pac or the US. I'd like to welcome you all to this session. We have some people from some really great organizations registered for the session today from all over the globe. So I'd just like you to, first of all, thank you all for taking the time out to join us today, which is this day 2 of Risky Business, to talk about all things identity and risk management. So the focus of today will be identity and access management, or IAM as it's known, and also risk management. I hope you've registered for some of the fantastic lineup of sessions. We have some great speakers from both our clients and our technology partners. They'll be giving you some great insights into how to navigate risks in the world of identity and beyond. So I'm Chris Boyle, Director of Identity here at Turnkey. I'm based out of the UK and I'll be your host for the session. As way of a brief introduction, I've been in the identity space for around 20 years. I've worked for various different consultancies, including the Big Four, and delivered many large-scale IAM programs across most sectors and across most technology vendors as well, to some of the world's leading companies. And I'm responsible here at Turnkey for ensuring that all of our teams meet all of the identity needs of our clients. And I'm joined today by 2 of my colleagues from our Australia and Singapore offices. I've got my counterpart here from down under, so I've got Rob Tyler, and our resident cybersecurity and data privacy expert, Avinash Pandey, from our Singapore office. So guys, I don't know if you just want to briefly introduce yourselves. So Rob, you want to go first?
Thanks, Chris. So great to be part of Risky Business for Turnkey this year. So similar, I've had a background in identity for about 17 years, mostly in sort of big tech services, for likes of HP and IBM, and so seeing, I guess, a lot of IAM projects over the years, and so I learned quite a few lessons on the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, thanks, Rob and Chris, for the brief. My name is Avinash, and I work with the office as Principal Identity and Access Management Services. Essentially, identity and access, as you know, right, it's not an isolated item. So over the last 20 years, I have worked in different domains within the cybersecurity. However, when it comes to a specific focus, there was never so much focus on identity and access management as it is today, because it almost intertwines with each and every function or domain of cybersecurity or digital initiatives. So looking forward to spending next 30 minutes with you, and hope you take something back with you after 30 minutes.
Brilliant, that's great. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Yeah, so before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Just want to say that if you can please post any questions you have in the chat window. We only have 30 minutes, so we'll look to respond to any questions that you have offline at the end of the session. Yeah, so thanks if you can do that. So today's session will be a panelist style session, where we're going to talk about the risks to your organization, and how IAM can help address them, why IAM is important, and then, as it is important, why do organizations struggle to find out who owns it, whose responsibility it is, and why is the IAM journey almost always different for everybody. We'll also talk about what we're seeing in the market and why really IAM should be a key part of your cyber strategy, and most importantly, be on the CIO and the CISO agenda as well. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about our experience and insight into how we can help your journey be much more successful. So without further ado, let's kick things off with some nice statistics. And the reason that we've got the statistics up here is that, you know, we spend a lot of time helping organizations understand the risks that can be mitigated against by IAM. And IAM itself actually covers a huge plethora of capabilities and technologies. But realistically, in the age of cloud, where the perimeter is everywhere, identity has now become one of the key lines of defense that all organizations have to protect against, especially in the wake of COVID, where remote working is now, so prolific around the world. So at Turnkey, we're historically a SAP security company, and as such, we have a unique insight into the role that SAP and ERPs play in business. And we work with organizations that have both SAP and without SAP. Basically, the companies that you guys all work for, you all have to manage some form of, you have to manage identities in some form or other. But we've got some statistics here, some of them quite incredible, and they've been kindly provided by our friends at Gartner, Forrester, and Cupic & Co. But what we're trying to position here is that essentially 9 out of 10 of the world's largest companies use SAP, and actually that accounts for 77% of the world's revenue. So 77%, that's a huge figure. Actually goes through some of these financial systems. And actually, the systems, 64% have had some form of breach in the last 2 years. So that's quite an astounding statistic. What we also see that is in most of these breaches, 70 or 80% of them require some form of access to the systems, whether that be privileged access or whether it's just identity misuse, or where the attackers actually try to escalate up to the privileged access, which is their end goal. What that actually means in real terms, when we think about it in pounds, dollars, and pence, is that the average cost to organizations is usually around $7 million, which ironically is much more than you would actually pay for an IAM program of some sort to help you to mitigate against that. But I think the most interesting fact for me is that for publicly listed companies, for example, that could result in the average share price decreasing by around 7%. And if you think some companies, 7% of the share price, the numbers are much more in the billions, not just the millions. So to help us navigate this a little bit better, guys, I guess it'd be good if we could start the session by really kicking off what we're seeing in the market. So some insights from you guys would be great. So I'll pass over to Rob first.
All right, thanks, Chris. So I think I'll give a perspective from Australia. Like elsewhere, I assume Australia is a bit of a mixed bag. So we've got high maturity in our large kind of enterprises, particularly finance. We've got well-defined processes supported by either legacy or a mix of legacy and IAM tooling. PAM tends to be a bit of an outlier in most instances, just in terms of the broad rollout, but certainly the processes and the capability exists and it's quite mature. We're seeing some new greenfield IAM in kind of the mid-enterprise, and where possible to do so, that's tending to go directly to cloud for that appetite. Usually, drivers around that and mid-enterprise tend to be a reduction of risk and improved security. I think there's a broad recognition that identity management is an essential part of reducing risk, in particular around that privileged access, managing privileged access. So I think another thing that's interesting in Australia is we're kind of experiencing a shortage of IAM capability that kind of constrains an uptake in IAM as well. So in some instances, we're kind of struggling to get enough capability to satisfy BAU or to operate identity, and that obviously plays into constraint of being able to undertake improvement projects as well. So that's a quick look at Australia. Maybe Avinash, give a view on Asia and Singapore.
Yeah, sure. So Rob, thanks. And Chris, you gave me the initial insight, right, or what's happening and why and how some of these things are being done today. So one of the things that we have observed with our clients in Asia Pacific region specifically, and I'll talk about more of the ASEAN and South Asia part. Is there is certainly a kind of effort by the organization to look at both the internal and external users with some kind of common focus or common kind of platform. So there has been traditionally you have a different set of people, different set of processes who are there to onboard your clients and your customers. Let's talk about a bank. Like all the internet banking or mobile banking customers are onboarded in a different way compared to your internal users. But what's happening now is last time everybody in the organization used to work from their own premises. But in the last couple of years, since the start of the pandemic, there's a lot of remote access that's going on. And today also, with many of the places COVID restrictions moved or being eased down, we still have a lot of them operating in a hybrid mode. So that is one part of it that many of these organizations are trying to look at it more holistically from an identity perspective. The second thing is they're all trying to establish a target operating model where the different stakeholders can operate, including the different tools that they may have deployed or planning to deploy, and how they all can be integrated. Also, many of the organizations are looking at implementing or following some kind of a zero trust framework. And it may mean different thing to different organizations based on the size, industry, regulatory requirements, so on and so forth. But certainly there is a kind of greater emphasis to bring all these things together. And many of the large and medium-sized organizations have started putting a dedicated, focused, well-equipped, well-trained identity and access governance management teams within the organization. So these are the few things that I see here that's happening in the market. Over to you, Chris.
Perfect. Thanks, Avinash. Yeah, I guess just from I guess in a EMEA perspective, then I think what we're seeing is there's appetite from our clients to to implement an IAM solution in some form. Maybe prioritizing. We see a lot of people prioritizing PAM first, but I think what we've got is we've got some clients who are experiencing kind of huge growth coming out of the pandemic. We've got some clients who are actually contracting or essentially preparing for the global recession, which is which we see in all of the news outlets. So I think it's worth mentioning that IAM can actually help in both scenarios. So if you are massively growing, then IAM can help you onboard people faster, get them up to speed much more quickly, and be able to be effective. But then if you are if you're reducing headcount, for example, then actually automating some of the business processes with less resources can also be much more beneficial, because that means you can then streamline the organization. So in most scenarios, IAM can help organizations with that. So yeah, just moving on then. So as the guys mentioned, there's some big areas of that IAM can help with. So one of the things to ask is, who do we see in the and it's a question that we get asked all the time. Whose problem within an organization is IAM? And whose responsibility is it? Is it HR? Is it IT? Where does this sit within an organization? So I guess Avinash, ask you that first.
So continuing to what I was referring to, right? So many a times many of the cybersecurity items are looked at purely as a risk, but several of the organizations are also looking at it as an opportunity. Right. And one of the things, like Chris, you highlighted, is like there is a possibility that people are definitely going to try to do more, get more done with less, and less good with the people and time and so on and so forth. And one of the things that a lot of organizations have this concern when they try to reduce any of those resources is whether we'll be maintaining the same level of productivity or not. And one of the concerns is whether there is a segregation of duties and whether there'll be conflict of interest and so on. So some of these questions are there, and people take some of those decisions at a very high level. But what IAM can do keys, and that is what brings many of these key stakeholders. Let it be the HR teams whose primary objective is to increase or enhance the productivity of all the staff. The compliance and audit teams are definitely looking at to maintain the good compliance and security posture. Obviously, the senior management wants to generate or increase the top level and also to reduce the cost. So IAM can do a lot of these kind of things. So many of these stakeholders, they all have interest. But then who should lead? So what we have seen here is, in some instances, most of the time it's led by the CIO team or the team within the CISO. But we also have seen in certain cases it's led by the HR, right, within the organization, because that is where when any staff joins and all the way to the time when the staff leaves and in between getting transferred and promoted and changing different roles, HR is something which is aware and managing that particular life cycle. So if you can bring your IAM program closer to your HR function, or if you can work in a much more collaborative way, then certain things, those organizations who are able to do it, they are able to reap the rewards. So many of them started with putting this whole IAM function under the CIO office. Slowly, gradually, sometimes it is carved out to the CISO office, but we're also seeing joint teams, joint leadership coming from the HR side as well as the business side, because they are interested in productivity of their staff. So we have seen many of them, but definitely what we are seeing is it's moving towards the business leadership from pure technology, what it used to be. So ultimately, it's a problem of everybody. But as I said, many of the organizations are trying to look at it as an opportunity for them to improve. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I fully agree. So it's certainly moving into that the responsibility sits with that C level, whether CISO or CIO. And unquestionably, there's a strong link to cybersecurity and risk management and identity. I think regardless of where identity sits within an organisation, there's that, as you mentioned, a responsibility to engage across the business. And that level of engagement is important to get buy-in and to I guess to realise the value of identity. Like you say, the value is not in a single place. Particularly if we also include customer identity on CIAM on the revenue side of the business, it's concerned about customer experience, seamlessly engaging with digital platforms, for example, and getting a better understanding of of how customers interface with the business. So that's critical. It's a critical part of identity as well. So I think the key is I don't think there's really a best practice answer as where IAM sits, but wherever it does sit, it needs to engage broadly, and it needs to support the full organisation and to buy-in across those various areas. Over to you, Chris.
Yeah, cool. Cheers, guys. So yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing this all the time. The conversation is, does it sit with HR because it's trying to move the lever processes and compliance? Is it an IT issue? So what we're seeing is that within an organisation now, IAM is almost establishing itself as its own kind of area, and I think you definitely need to have it kind of almost as a separate function within a business, so because it needs that that kind of almost CISO or CIO level board buy-in, if you like, because it does actually touch all areas of the business. So yeah, it is, as you say, there's various different there's no best practice, there's no right answer to this, but as long as it's got the right sort of senior level stakeholder sponsors and responsibilities, and you have to there has to be collaboration between HR and IT and the business as well. So cool, thanks guys. So yeah, I mean, once you've decided on whose responsibility it is, how do you see IAM is most successfully delivered? Is it big transformation projects, or is it much more sort of smaller agile based projects? So Rob, I'll go to you this time first.
Sure. That's good. So yeah, I guess over the years we've all seen these gigantic transformation programs in waterfall style that have delivered identity management that's sort of fit for an organisation 3 years before it. But nowadays we're seeing agile develop identity. We're seeing an understanding that identity is required to evolve rather than to be kind of set in stone over several years. So it needs to evolve along with the organisation. As organisations need to change, so does identity. We can also still do see, in some cases, the small, projects, one-off projects for identity, where it starts out as a minimum viable product, and the funding essentially ends at the end of that, and then moves into an operated state. So the BAU teams are kind of tasked with rolling it out further in the organisation. In that case, we sort of see, progress stagnate somewhat. The BAU have no time left other than operating to engage with business and to start that, to build that buy-in that's necessary. So we see in that case it's not necessarily the best way. So identity programs certainly need long-term funding, a recognition that it needs proper funding over several years, and that it needs to find a balance between efficiently operating and improvement initiatives across that period. Over to you, Avinash.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. See, one of the things that is very, very important here is like, how do we look at these as a transformational project? So many times what we have seen is these projects are run as multiple streams. And when you run the multiple streams within the IAM project, so let's say somebody may be implementing an identity and access governance components, somebody may be implementing authentication, or somebody may be implementing like single sign-on, or integrating the automated provisioning with the different applications, the systems that they have. Now, what is very important here is we need to have a target operating model. Where do we want to see our integrated identity and access management processes converging over a period of time? So that's very, very important. Second is, many of these things can run parallel, and they don't need to, in general, run sequentially. So what we have noticed is the organizations who can adopt, I wouldn't say fully agile, but some kind of concept where they're trying to do things in an agile way while managing the overall program, and putting the pieces together, and setting the priorities and allocating the resources and going for the quick wins is always something which works for the organization. So many of the organizations who want to show some kind of getting much closer to their target operating model by utilizing the resources available to them and all the possible constraints that every organization has today, right? So, so different organizations have different approaches, and also based on their maturity. Like some of the organizations may still be doing the provisioning and access reviews, but a very manual way. So for them, it's a very quick win if they can automate some of these processes. This also brings some kind of visibility to the leadership, to the management, the line managers, like who have what kind of access. So at least they see some kind of real value in the earlier stages of the project. And once you show that kind of tangible benefits that everybody can appreciate and acknowledge it, which is reducing, let's say, amount of time they need to spend on access certification when they're doing manually compared to when you do it through a system. And further down the line, how fast you can go and take the remedial action based on the access reviews. If they see that value, the whole cycle can be done in 2 days compared to last time it was done in a month or 2 months or a quarter, obviously you are going to get continuous support. So depending on the maturity of these processes within an organization, the clarity of the target operating model the organizations have, many of these projects or programs, rather, I will call it as, vary from each other. Again, the size of the organization, geographical divergence, and the digital transformation journey many of the organizations are going through also adds up to the context. So you need to be sensitive to all of that, because you have to look at most of the IAM projects as an enabler, something which helps you to onboard the users fast, manage their accesses in a compliant and secure manner, and also participate in the overall zero trust framework philosophy of the organization. Yes.
Cool. Brilliant. Thanks, Avinash. Yeah, and so I think what I'm kind of hearing there from that, and what again what we're seeing as well is that you've got multiple capabilities, you've got governance, you've got compliance, you've got single sign-on, you've got multi-factor authentication, you've got consumer IAM that all needs to be addressed. So having a clear strategy, having a target operating model based on how you're going to deliver that, and I think the best way to where the successes that we've seen is that that hybrid approach. So you're delivering your strategy almost as a waterfall over multiple years, but then hybrid, so you're delivering benefits to the business over that period rather than any sort of big bang approach. Yeah, and then from you can't just deliver IAM for maybe like 1 or 2 years. You have to embark on a continuous improvement and expand that out to all areas of the business, because some people they will implement and then not do anything with it after that initial implementation. There has to be a continuous improvement program behind it to ensure success. So, and then just speaking of success, guys, quickly, I know we've only got a couple of minutes, but what do you see, as the main reasons, why IAM projects fail, and then ultimately how do we turn that into a successful delivery? So Avinash, quickly, some final thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So I'll turn around the question. I'll talk about why the projects are successful, right? So let's conclude the final answer in that way. So one of the thing is you need to have a competent team management. You can't have successful IAM projects if you don't have sufficiently or adequately trained people who are managing the project. Second is collaboration. So many times I've seen why it doesn't work, and where it works is because how well you are able to collaborate with the key stakeholders. Some of them are very important right at the beginning, like for example, HR processes, HR tools, HR team members, right? In order to automate the join and move leave processes. And obviously, last but not the least, you need to standardize. You have to start with the standard processes. Right on day one, if you start looking for 50% of exception and spend 80% of your time to manage those 2% of exception, they will leave up the resources and deal with the project. So these are the few things I believe are key success factors for any IAM project. Remember, IAM projects are also projects. A lot of projects do fail, but the percentage of IAM projects failing are much higher, and some of these things can be avoided by following some of the things that we should. Rob?
Thanks, Avinash. Good point. So I'll be extremely quick. We're about to close out. So why do IAM projects fail? So I don't think I've seen too many outright failure of IAM projects. I think we've seen percent of brutal. And I wouldn't admit to being on one that had failed, but I've certainly seen plenty of IAM projects that don't, I guess, deliver the full value that they were based on. There's two reasons. One is that it's often treated as technical deployments when it should be really, I guess, an engagement that requires deep engagement across the organisation with all stakeholders and buy-in of business stakeholders, but also users. And the other is inadequate funding. So requires funding over a longer term, not just a simple project basis. I guess the other thing I'd say that the lesson we've all learned over the years is that IAM is also an opportunity to try and simplify processes. So to build a complex IAM system that's tightly integrated into the business process is also building up a lot of technical debt that needs supporting over longer term. It's expensive and it's difficult, and an organisation loses agility in doing so. So IAM project should be an opportunity to try and simplify the process as much as possible, and to ask those kind of questions. Is it necessary that we go down to this minute detail in terms of configuration when we can stick with best practice? So that's where good experience is essential to sort of navigate that decision-making process about where compromises can and should be made, or shouldn't be made, for example. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to use up all your time.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Well, we've pretty much run out of time. We just want to summarise what we've kind of discussed. Essentially, IAM touches all areas of the business. Identity is not just a HR problem. It's not just an IT problem. It's essentially a business problem. So, defining an identity owner and giving the right level of responsibility will lead to success. If you build a strategy and target operating model, align that to your business drivers and priorities. It will help, put structure around your journey delivering IAM across the multiple technologies and business processes that it aims to automate. But really, the key thing is ensuring buy-in from the business and senior management engagement, and also make sure you've got the right level of decision making, because I would say that for me is the main driver of a successful IAM project. So, guys, I hope that leaves you some food for thought. Just before we wrap up, I just wanted to remind you of the exciting lineup of sessions that we have for the rest of the day. We've got SailPoint and Beyond Trust, talking about zero trust and how IGA and PAM working together help to satisfy your compliance needs while improving security and the user experience at the same time. We have St. James's Place, one of our financial services clients, talking about how to deliver a successful privileged access management project. And then we've got Carlsberg and BP talking about how to mature security and compliance and manage risk in both an SAP world and across the rest of the non-SAP enterprise landscape. And then concluding the day, we have Range Consulting talking about risk controls and compliance on the journey to SAP S/4HANA. So, guys, thanks all for tuning in. Thanks to our panelists, Rob and Avinash. If you do have any questions about anything you've heard today, please do reach out. If you have asked a question, we'll get back to you in due course. But thanks again for listening. We hope you've enjoyed the session. Have a wonderful rest of the day and rest of the conference. Thanks again.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.